Hi, I'm Scott Francis.
And I'm Dr. Joe Wadlinger.
I am a comedian and a motivational speaker, and Joe is a doctor. I think it's kind of cool to have two different perspectives of a marriage. We both have a wonderful marriage. He's been married over 30 years. I've been married almost 20, so we have about 50 years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you guys can get something from this tape. We don't know where you're at in your marriage. You might have, a 9 for a marriage, and that's great. You might be in a position of a 2. So hopefully you'll get, no matter where you are, at least a little something to enhance your marriage or even save your marriage.
1 out of 2 marriages end in divorce, Scott. The statistics are still the same. It hasn't gotten any better. Even with all the different counselors and people trying to tell us how to stay married, it hasn't gotten any better.
Are you telling me that the odds are like pretty much flipping a coin?
Flipping a coin.
Yikes. That's pretty bad.
Pretty bad odds. You know what else I saw on the internet the other day? The 7-year itch. It used to be that in my generation that about 7 years you started getting discontented with marriage and you had to get past that point. It's kind of a hump year. It's become the 3-year glitch now. It's accelerated. People are getting discontent even in the 3rd year of marriage.
Why do you think that is, Joe?
I think part of the problem is that our society is so media intensive. We got so many things coming our way. We see things on movies and television and the internet showing us how life should be, the good life, which is really not real. It's all fantasy. And so people are looking at and going, I want that kind of life. So they dump their marriage and they try another one. They try to get that romantic type of thing that they see on television. It used to be years ago, people would watch soap operas and they would go, I want to be like her. Nowadays, that we've got so much incoming stuff that we are a very hedonistic society or materialistic society. Whatever feels good, do it. And so people are saying, I think there can be something better because that's what I see all around me.
Sure.
So.
Well, I think, first of all, I just want to tell you guys that are listening, I think, of course, Joe's a doctor, and I'm a comedian for a living, and I do motivational speaking as well. But it's really funny to have two different perspectives. And I've been married almost 20 years, and Dr. Joe's been married over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we have about 50 years of experience. So, this is just going to be a heart-to-heart. Let's just talk about things that we think affect the divorce rate.
Right.
I think one of them is being stubborn. I think, bullheaded, whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of guys are bullheaded, and I'll tell you what, the prize for that is loneliness.
Right.
And so there's just no room for it. And what it comes down to is being immature. Yes. I think. Yes. I asked my wife one night on a scale 1 to 10 where our marriage was, and she said it's a 9 3/4.
Really?
And I said, wow, I think that's pretty good. Now, before you think I'm bragging, guys, at one time my marriage used to be a 2. So I kind of got into spending a lot of money that I didn't have, and that can take a toll on a marriage. So I've been on both ends of the spectrum, I guess you'd say, and I like it being close to a 10. So I think we just have some ideas in the 50 years we've been married to bring to the table.
Right. And Scott, I don't think that most people really have a good role model for marriage.
I agree.
If 1 out of 2 marriages are ending in divorce, that means that 50% of the people do not have a good role model. And those are just the marriages that fail. What about the marriages that are just hanging on by a thread? So, and the media doesn't really give us a good role model. And, the Hollywood scene, they're getting divorced and remarried all the time. So
absolutely,
it really needs to come from people who have been married, have good, stable marriages, have happy wives, and it needs to come from people who are staying married.
I agree. Well, I think a big part of it is immaturity. I mean, it's just, it comes down to just being immature. We just need to grow up. Being a comedian, of course, I'm always kidding around. And I think the number one thing that you can bring into your life to not get a divorce is, of course, making God number one in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
True.
Absolutely number one.
Yes.
But I do think that number 2 is developing a sense of humor. Yes. Because I think that it's a strong part of making a marriage. I mean, look, it's enjoy the journey. I mean, enjoy yourself on the way.
Exactly.
And I mean, this, when you get married, it should be you're one for each other. I mean, you might not feel like that about your wife right now, but you can turn this boat around. I have a friend up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Not going to mention any names, and because there's no need to do that. But we went to a fast food place, and he said, "Scott, I'm actually having trouble with my marriage." And I said, "Well, what?" I'm not even going to mention his name, but I said, "What seems to be the problem?" She goes, "Well, that," and he called her a name. "That so and so said this to me. That so and so said this to me." And I go, "All right, listen, I don't want to know that part. What's your part in it?" Well, and he proceeded to tell me, well, I said, "Let me ask you this. Do you contribute to the problem at all? Or is it just all her just complaining and, just acting like she does?" And he said, "Well, I do a couple of things." And I said, what do you do? Just tell me. I'm guy to guy. Just tell me what it is. He said, "Well," I said, "What does she complain about?" He says, "Well, I, when I go to the bathroom, number one, I go on the seat a little bit, like when I left it on." I said, "Okay, well, do you wipe it after you go on the seat a little bit?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Why don't you wipe it?" And he said, "Well, it's at night, and I don't have my glasses, and I just, she complains about me going on the toilet seat." And I said, "Well, if you came to my house and did that, you'd see me complain." Yeah. And so whatever you want to do. So that, she has a valid point there. I said, "What's another complaint that she has?" She says, "I'm always into my hobby." And he says, I practice magic. And he says, I like doing coin tricks and card tricks. And I said, "Uh-huh." And I said, "Well, so what's the complaint?" And she said, "Well, when she comes in the door, I don't acknowledge her. I'm practicing my magic." And I went, "Again, I would be upset if you did that to me if I was a woman. You need to drop whatever you're doing. Just do these couple of things. Drop what you're doing and act excited like you did when you were dating her." So go, "Here she is," act excited. And I feel that if you change wiping the seat and you change that she's more important than your hobby, I think you're going to start to see things come around. And I said, "What's the third thing that she complains about?" She said, "Not having enough time with the family." And I said, this is so easy. And you're talking about getting a divorce, and these are three small things that you can do. I mean, you can turn this puppy around. And, 6 weeks later, he gave me a phone call, and he said, "Guess what? We're not getting a divorce, and we make it important to have a date once a week like you told us." So I made time for her and the family, and I wipe the seat, and I make her number one, and I don't put my hobby above her. So, guys, it doesn't, sometimes it's not complicated. It's not like, like rocket science. Sometimes it's very simple things. Don't you agree?
It's the little things. I mean, the little things say "I love you." When we were younger in our marriage, Heidi used to have to get up and go to work, and then I'd get up after her, and I would always make the bed. Even though most men would say, "Well, that's a woman thing. I mean, she's supposed to be making the bed." I would just make sure that the pillows were puffed up, that the covers were there, and it was all nice when she came home. And she used to tell everybody about that. "My husband makes the bed in the morning." It's some of the little things. I mean, just like when you drink milk, washing out the bottom of your glass, or turning your socks right side out instead of leaving them one in, one out on the floor, or whatever that case may be. Those little things say, "Hey, I know that these things that normally you would do, but I'm going to do these for you." And so that a lot of those things say "I love you." Just the little things say "I love you." So thinking of the other person instead of always about yourself and what you can do is very important.
Yes, it is. And
here's a little story that you were talking about, a person complaining about his wife, and like this little story about a psychologist. A man came into the psychologist, and he was just going on and on about all the things about his wife. She does this and she does that, and she does this and she does that. And the psychologist he's writing so fast, and he was turning pages, and his notebook was just turning over and over. And pretty soon he got down to about the third page, and he said, whoa, wait a minute. He said, if all these things were wrong with her, why'd you get married in the first place? He says, oh, she wasn't like that when we got married. And he says, oh, you made her like this. So
Right.
sometimes the things that, most of us don't get married because we hate the other person.
Right.
I mean, I don't think anyone does. There's something about them that you loved that you got married in the first place. You need to go back to that. You need to find out what were those things that I really liked about her, that I really loved about her, and start accentuating those things instead of, looking at did she put the cap on the toothpaste tube the right way, or did she make the proper food that I like, or what? Those are little things.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the other things and say, well, these are the things that I loved about her.
That's why I feel that it's so important to come up with dates once a week.
Yes.
I've been made fun of by other guys, and out on the golf course, and these guys, what they wanted me to do is go play golf, disc golf actually, and I said, okay, let me ask my wife if I can cancel our date. But I promised my wife on Wednesday we'd have a date. Well, I actually said to her, honey, is it okay if I go with the guys? And she said, yeah, it's okay. And then I thought about it for a minute, and I said, I am going to live with this lady the rest of my life, and she's more important to me than playing golf. And so I went to the guys, and I go, guys, I'm going to have a date with my wife like I promised her. And I went and told her this. It was as if I gave her the keys to a Ferrari. I mean, she was really excited, and I was like, wow, I didn't get that, but
Right.
what it showed is she was just important, and that's what women want. They want you to, they want to be important,
Right.
So
They really need to be, beside God, the number one person in your life.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know guys, sometimes they get a little prickly, and they get in their little mode or whatever. And that's exactly when they need a hug. I didn't understand that for the longest time. I just wanted to run in the other room and go to my cave, shut the door, and go, whatever, And at that time, I just said, you know what? This is when she needs a hug, and that's when I go over and give her a hug and say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right.
And the important thing too is, Scott, that you don't just touch her when you want to have a romantic night.
Right.
You should be touching her all the time. You should be hugging her all the time. You should be holding her all the time, so that there's not a cause and effect relationship. Because sometimes we think that they don't catch the little things that we do, but they're very intelligent in this matter, and they can say, "Oh, he's doing this because he just wants something."
Well, when I first got married, I actually got married on the beach, and my pastor came up to me at the time, and he said, "I want you to listen to this." He said, "I want you to look in your wife's eyes at least 1 minute, solid minute per day." I thought he was crazy when he said that. Well, in this hustle and bustle world, I mean, we get wrapped up into not looking at our wife, so we actually have to make that a focus.
Right.
And so sometimes I said, okay, it's time. We call it pillow talk, and all it is you're laying on the bed, and you're looking into each other's eyes, and you're saying, how's it going today? That's all it is. And women want you to listen. I interviewed over 100 women, and the number one answer that they came up with is they want us to listen. And so let me repeat that. As guys, the number one answer, women want us to listen. Again, one more time. The guys, we need to listen to our women. That's what they want.
Well, that brings up a subject that one of the top things that people argue about in marriage is communication.
Sure.
Women and men talk differently. It's said that women use almost 3 times the number of words and say that many words in a day than men do.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, women are usually detailed people. Men are headliners. I love that. Hey, tell us that story about the flat tire. About how the headliners versus details.
Yeah, it was funny. My wife, I told her one time, I said, honey, I had a flat tire. She said, well, what happened? And I went, well, it was a tire. And then it went flat. And then I fixed it. And, of course, she wanted to know, what the guy looked like that helped you. I mean, where was it? Was it in front of a bank? Or what? I mean, it's like, what does that matter?
Right.
It's like I just go straight to the chase. And, women want details. They're detail-oriented. So if you say, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it can go the other way around too. Sometimes women can, go like. Let me give you an example. One time to me, my wife Dee Dee said to me, "My brother is going to the beach this week," and I went, "Oh, that's great." And she said, "Well, I was thinking, he has one of those beds, that the Tempur-Pedic beds," and I said, "Okay." And she said, "Well, I was thinking we could go over and try that out while he goes to the beach." And I went, "Okay, we could do that." And she said, "Well, he's going to be there for a few days, and it's, this weekend." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And she goes, "Well, while we're there trying out the bed, can we watch his kids?" And I was just like, I just thought that was so funny. I'm just like, So I think that she could have cut to the chase, and she said, "Look, my brother Jay is going to the beach this weekend. Do you mind if we watch the kids? And while we're there, we can try out the bed." So I think, with women, they want to add details to it, and guys just want, just tell us, go right straight to the point. So I think it works both ways.
Well, women are very relational. Men are what they do. Women are who they know, by and large. I mean, when two men get together, what do they say? What do you do? I mean, when you meet somebody new, it's, what do you do? And if it's a person who's retired, what did you do? For women, it's, oh, do you know that person? Oh, you must know my niece who works for so and so, and where's the babies, and how many kids do you have? They're very relational, and so we need to understand that as men, is they want relationship. They don't want just the headlines; they want relationship. And it was interesting when. At one time, when I was in school, I spent a lot of time in the home, and Heidi was out working, and she would come home, and I'd just start talking because I wanted to know all this different information, and she'd go, "Honey, I've been at work all day long. I've heard all these different people. Can we just leave that go for a little while?" So I understand a lot of times when women are home mothers and wives, and they spend a lot of time in the home, when they just hear kids talking and childish language and baby language and those kind of things. They just want an adult to talk to. So when you come home, you need to spend that time. And that's what's so good about your pillow talk thing is, here, I'm giving you my ear. I want you to just let it out. Tell me what's important to you. And you will learn an incredible amount of things about your spouse if you just will spend that time with them.
Listen, guys, I know you think it's going to go on and on for hours and hours. Oh, it will go on hours and hours if you drag it out. The best way I've found is to have the pillow talk, lay there, just look right at her and say, "What's going on today?" They usually take 20 or 30 minutes to get it out. And guess what? You're done. It's like, it's not a big deal. But if you just go, "Oh, yeah," and you keep on blowing them off, and what happens is it does drag out to 4 or 5 hours. So you can do whatever you want to do. But I've found that it makes my wife very happy to, kind of care about what's going on with her.
Well, and I think dates are good to regroup with, is to kind of sit down and make sure that you're on the same page, you're going in the same direction. Because many times what drives people apart, what drives people into divorce, is they're going in two totally different directions, and they don't even realize. They wake up one day and go, "Wow, you're over here, and I'm over here. What's important to me is not important to you." And so we need to regroup. We need to get back together. We need to have, when I was in workplace, we'd have team meetings, get everybody together, talk together, find out what the goals of the company were. Well, we need to find out what the goals of the family are, where we're headed. And by dating, it's this time. It's away from the home. I say the same thing about vacations together. You do a vacation in the home is no vacation at all, because you're going to be doing what you do in the home. She's going to be doing what she's doing in the home. And the same thing with a date. When you're going out, go someplace that you can sit down together and just talk. It's not a business meeting. But you can talk about what's important to you. You can talk about what's going on with you at your workplace, or what's going on with you with your hobby or whatever, and find out what's going on with her. And you regroup and you reconnect back to the basics, back to the goals that you have.
Well, there's a lot of things in marriages that I think split a marriage instead of join a marriage. Let me give you an example. Money is one of the biggest causes for divorce.
Right.
And for some marriages to be set up where there's his money and there's her money, that's just simply crazy to me. And because, that's great. It's like, why did you even get married? I mean, of course, if this works for you, that's great. I know some marriages it works, but it's very few that work like this. Because what happens is Well, if you're in charge of paying the water bill and she's in charge of paying for cable, what happens if one of you gets sick and they can't pay it? What do you just say? Oh, tough? That's too bad? I mean, what is that? You know what I mean? So you need to unite. And so, there's a show that I forget what the show was, but it was like Discovery Channel or something, some 2020 or something. And it said they interviewed the criminally insane, and they found that they needed one guard for every 100 criminally insane guys. And they said, why is that? Why do we need one guard for every 100 criminally insane people? Well, they found that lunatics don't unite. Mm-hmm. So they won't talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And as well as I know, things when you come together as a team or a partnership, you're stronger. Horses, I think it's the Clydesdale horses, pull 500 pounds. It's something like this, 500 pounds apiece. But you put them together and they'll pull 1,800. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. So so if you're a lunatic, don't unite. It's like, and that's what one of the guards said. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about money, too. It's important to discuss large purchases because I've heard one story about a family where the husband would just come home with a new car and wouldn't even discuss it with his wife. It's like, we can't afford that. We can't do that. So it's important to discuss. One of the things that I've learned is impulse buying is detrimental to a family. And, they say the difference between men and boys is the size of their toys. Men have a tendency to go out and buy big items. Women usually buy a lot of little items like clothes or jewelry or something like that. But men buy large items and just all of a sudden spring that on your wife that, no, honey, I just bought a bass boat, or I just bought a set of golf clubs, or I just bought something like that, is devastating to the finances, especially if your wife is handling a lot of the bill paying and things like that. So it's important to curb that impulse buying and to talk about it ahead of time. Sometimes there's a perspective that you might not have. So we since we know that money is one of the leading causes of arguments in the family, it's better to discuss those things ahead of time, know where the finances are. Especially if you have a budget, it's very important because you can look to see, can we afford that? Mm-hmm. And then allow both sides to have their money. I don't mean like separate checking accounts. I'm saying here, you have $100 per week, I have $100 per week. You can spend it any way you want to. I won't ask you how you spend it. I won't criticize you how to spend it. That's your money. That's your like an allowance for the week. And the same thing with him. That relieves a lot of arguments. Instead of taking it out of the general fund of the family and that was money we were supposed to use for food. Well, if you both have kind of like a little amount that you can have during the week, you can spend it for lunches, you can spend it for any little things that you want to have. It's really important to do that because you want to, the finances in the family need to be something that's mutually shared. Mm-hmm. And even the bill paying. I know a lot of men don't even know how much the power bill is. They don't know how much the water bill is. They don't know how much the mortgage is. They don't realize the burden of that. They don't realize that they've got to maybe once a year pay their taxes on the home or something like that. So they really need to understand the finances of your home. Even if you're not the one who does the bill paying, even if you're not the one that takes care of the checkbook, you need to understand the budget of the home to make sure that you're not overspending and putting a lot of stress on your wife.
In my household, we have it set up like if you're going to buy something that costs over $50, then discuss it with each other. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you're not coming home like with that speedboat like you talked about. But I have a funny story. I actually we're thinking about upping it to 100 because things are getting a little bit more expensive.
You can't even get a tank of gas for $50
exactly.
anymore.
Well, that's excluding gas and food. Yeah. I was at a flea market one time. And $50 was our limit, and I wanted these Tony Robbins tapes, and the guy said, I want $75 for it. And I said, okay, I'll be back. And he said, where are you going? And I said, I actually have to call my wife. If it's over $50, we have to discuss. He goes, all right, I'll sell them to you for $50. So I actually got $75 worth of tapes. Well, actually $400 worth of tapes for $50 because the guy knew that if my wife said no, then I'm not coming back to buy them. So he lowered the price to 50, and that really was the deal. I wasn't putting them on. I was going to actually call her and say, I'm thinking about getting these tapes. But if you discuss things ahead of time, then there's nothing shocking.
Right.
And,
Right.
again, be united.
Well, and you're not really asking permission. You're just discussing it. Sometimes there's a perspective that you might not have, or a situation that you might not know about.
Right.
So it's very important. Communication is extremely important in your marriage. If you're not communicating all the time in your marriage, then you need to start communicating right now, today.
Absolutely. Well, I have something, with a guy, if a woman starts to complain, they'll roll their eyes. Oh, here we go. You gotta whip out graphs and charts, and this is you, this is me, this is what's going on. Really, if you let them get it out and say, look, this is why it bothered me, and then they just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Once you learn why it bothered them, well, you're not going to create that mistake again.
Right.
So let them share. It's sort of like a customer complaining on customer service. They walk up and they go, "Hey, I'm not happy." Blah 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 blah. Can you imagine just going, "Hey, zip it, zip," like that? Like, oh no, you're not going to have a very happy customer. So so hear it out, and you might not make that mistake ever again. I think that's worth hearing it out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm just going to mention this one more time about dating. I'm really big on having dates with my wife. I mean, it's just a big part of our marriage, and so I try to make it at least once a week. I mean, some people do it once a month, and that's fine if it works for you. But I just find that I'm in tune with my wife at least once a week. But there's a lot of cheating is rampant,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of guys, the cheat, just say, well, I wasn't getting what I needed at the house, and I'm like, it's like, well, do something about it. I mean, don't just grow apart. And when women were asked why they cheated, the reason was always they didn't feel intimacy.
Right.
They didn't feel any intimacy. So how do you get intimate? You start dating. I mean, this is what it's about. So I pretty much think that a lot of people are cheating because they feel no connection. So if both of you are happy, why would you go anywhere else?
Right.
So that's what it comes down to. So, but your actions should always say, "I dig you." Look, I dig you.
Yes.
And
Very
so
good.
whatever you do, I mean, Dee Dee, my wife, knows that I dig her. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and I tell her she's pretty. I give her words of affirmation all the time. And she loves, there's a thing called the 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Of course, you're well aware of this too. And it is just, for some women, it might be touch, or for some women it might be something, if you're holding a mop in your hand, that's sexy to them, whatever. It's so this book is a must read if you want to understand your partner. Actually, Joe, you have something that goes a little even deeper than that. So I would recommend that book, the 5 Love Languages. But if someone wanted to get even deeper to know their spouse, you have something.
Yes, I am. I'm certified in Myers-Briggs personality type testing.
Okay.
And what we found is that everybody is different. They're different personalities, and they get information differently. They process information differently. And a lot of times people aren't getting along because they're of different personality types. I'll give you an example. One person that I know very well said that early on in their marriage, they would argue a lot. And so at one time, their church offered them to take the Myers-Briggs personality test. And they found out they were exactly opposite personality types. And when they started reading about those particular personality types, the wife said, "Oh, that's why he does what he does."
Mm-hmm.
And the husband said, "Oh, that's why she does what she does." And after that, their arguments reduced by like 90%.
Wow.
Because they understood now, this is how we're made. This is how we're wired. We're not doing this to aggravate each other, but this is how we're wired. So I would suggest that, every couple, every person go and take the personality test. And we offer that online at personalitytypetests.com. So if you want to go on there, you can just sign in. You can do by PayPal or anything like that, and just go on and find out about yourself. And you'll be amazed at the information that you get about each other and how that will really help your marriage to stay together.
Remember, it's you and her against the world. When you get married, you need to be as tightly knit as you can, and this is what it's about. And a lot of people make the mistake of hanging around people, couples that are toxic for them. And let me give you an example. I mean, if you're hanging around another couple and just say they like to party a lot, and all of a sudden you find yourself partying more because you're hanging around these people. So, and then the next thing you know, you're fighting, and the car is screeching to a halt, and you're opening up the door. You're like, "Get out!" You're drunk. I mean, it's like, so to me, there might be toxic people in your life. You just need to get away from them. Like I know this couple that have been married for quite a while, actually. I'm talking about 30, 40 years, and I noticed that he cuts her down all the time.
Wow.
All the time. And if you're hanging around something like this, and like they'll say, hey, honey, don't you think you need to cut down on the food there? You're getting a little wide, or something like that. I mean, if you see that as a guy, you're going to think that's normal, thinking, and it's not. And so you're going to start maybe cutting your wife down. And I'll tell you what, that's a good way to separate yourself and have things go haywire. So hang around the right people. I mean, it does make a difference with your marriage.
The other thing too is your wife should never be the brunt of your jokes, and she should never be the brunt of your sarcasm.
Correct.
And I mean, even privately and or publicly.
Correct.
Because if you love her, if you truly love her, you protect her. That's one of your roles, is to protect her. And I always have said that the home is to be a safe place. Your kids and your wife both need to know that this is a safe place. We do not hurt each other here. We do not cut each other down here. We do not call each other names.
Oh, it's a safe haven. Your house is
haven.
a safe haven. It should be.
Because out there, you're going to find people who are constantly for themselves against you.
Yep.
And inside your home, it needs to be a safe place. Her wife needs to feel that this is a place she's protected, that she's provided for. And I've always said this too: the home is the woman's. Man, you just come home, you dump your shoes off, you sit in the chair, you lean back, watch television. But women identify with their homes. They identify with the decorating in their homes. There's a story about a guy that I know that he was having problems in his marriage. They were constantly fighting, and there was a lot of stress in their marriage. And a wise man told him, he said, what do you argue about? And the biggest thing they were arguing about was their home. It wasn't decorated well. There were structurally things that needed to be done, or more room here, whatever the case may be. And so this man said, why don't you just take time and fix up your home? Fix up the bathroom, fix up these rooms, paint, make it look nice. And so he took that advice, and he did. And he went through his house, and he made it look really nice. Because one of his big complaints was he was a very extroverted person, a person who loved to have people around. And his wife would never let him bring people to the home to have parties there or have gatherings there or anything else. She was embarrassed about her home. And so he thought that was a pretty good idea. So he went through and he did all the fixing to his home. And all of a sudden, she said, once she felt that her home was a place that she could feel proud of, she started allowing him to invite people in and have parties and gatherings there, and their marriage has been a lot better since that time. So you need to find out, just like the 5 love languages, you need to find out what's important to your spouse, what's important to your wife. What are the things that really matter to her? Some of the things we may think are important to us, and we think, well, that's important to her, are not. And that's why we talk about the communication. You need to talk about what things are important to you. What can I do to make your life easier?
I know as a comedian and a speaker, when I go on the road, if there's 2 dishes in the sink, we can't leave the driveway because she won't leave that in the sink. And to me, I'm like, it will be there when we get back. But she's going to think of those 2 dishes in the sink the whole time we're gone. So I'm like, all right, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that my wife does too. Before we leave, she wants to have that sink clean. And when she comes home and there's stuff all in that sink, it adds stress to her life. She that's important to her. Other women it may not be. So you need to find out your wife. I remember in the movie Fireproof, they were talking about knowing your wife, and they said you need to get a degree in your wife. He said he was talking about, well,
That's good.
how's that with your family? She goes, well, I've gotten like a high school degree. I need to get a college degree in my wife because I need to study her. I need to find out about her. I need to know all the information that I can. I knew one couple. She liked cards. A lot of women like flowers. She liked cards. You could bring her flowers all day long and she wouldn't think that was special. But having the right card, that was the special thing for her. So her husband learned that. He learned that cards were important to her, and he always made sure that on every event or every anniversary or every birthday or everything, he got a card that was appropriate for her and spoke to her exactly what his feelings were towards her. So you need to get a degree in your wife to find out, what does she really like? What things are important to her? What things will make her happy? Because as one comedian said, happy wife, happy life.
That's correct. Well, my wife is very frugal, and so if I give her flowers sometimes she'll say, how much were those flowers? And I'll tell her what they were, and she goes, you could have bought a plant. I'd rather have a plant. And I'm like, but most guys wouldn't know that about my wife, but I, sort of have a degree on Dee Dee, and when I buy her a plant, she's happier with that because she's a frugal person. She wants the flower to keep giving, so I still give her flowers, but if I can get them at a good price or something, but she'd rather have a plant, believe it or not. So, it's the little things that add up. One of the top things in a marriage that people have trouble with is boredom, believe it or not. Now,
Yes.
My thing is this. If you have a boring marriage, then shame on both of you. You need to change it, you know what I mean? So if it's boring, then add some things to it. I just think you need to enjoy the journey because, you only have this one life. You might as well enjoy it on the way. I came out with a buddy of mine, it's called A Dozen Fabulous Dates. There's actually more than a dozen on there. But we try to figure out what a good date is between either a married couple or somebody that's dating, to get ready for a marriage. And, the total... The goal is to be married, and so you have to start the relationship even before you get married. So to me, we came up with this tape, a dozen fabulousdates.com, and we came up with this just to help guys, because if you ask the average guy, what's a good date? They go, I don't know.
Right.
A dinner, a movie,
Right.
I don't know, like that. And we interviewed over 100 women, and we got some answers. And I'm 50 years old, and I learned a few things. One of the things that I learned from interviewing 100 women was one woman said, "Do you cook for your wife?" And I said, "Well, I've made her breakfast in bed dozens of times before in our marriage, but I haven't really made dinner. I help with dinner all the time, but I haven't really made dinner." And I said, "And I do have a good excuse." And she said, "What's your excuse?" And I said, "Well, let's see. My wife loves to cook, and I hate to cook. To me, that's a no-brainer. Okay, go ahead and cook, But she said, "I bet you make dinner for your wife every once in a while. I bet she'll be excited about that." So I went home that night. This was just a few weeks ago, and I said, "Honey, would it be important for me to cook dinner every once in a while?" She said, "I'd probably fall out." And I go, "What does that mean? You want me to do it?" And she said, "Yes, I would. Every once in a while. Yeah, I know I love to cook and you hate to cook, but every once in a while, yes, I would." So if your marriage is boring, make it exciting. So I learned something about my wife after interviewing those 100 women that, hey, maybe I'll just have dinner ready on the table. Now, of course, it's not going to be anything exotic. It'll probably be a grilled steak and broccoli, and I think I know how to do a baked potato. But anyway, I think I'll have dinner for waiting, and I think that will be something special. Make my marriage a little bit more exciting by that one little thing.
And you said there's some more information. It's at, what is it, a dozenfabulousdates.com?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a tape that out of these 100 women, we figured out what they talked about what a good date was. So it was kind of interesting. So,
Scott, one of the things you taught me comes from actually from a verse in the Bible. It says, "Laughter doeth good like a medicine."
yes.
I have a very dry sense of humor, but I can still make my wife laugh.
Sure.
And we mostly every day I try to do something that makes her laugh. I'm not anywhere near where you are, but you've come up with some great ideas about that. But you think we need to laugh together. It increases the endorphins in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
It melds us together. We don't need to laugh at each other. We need to laugh with each other. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to enjoy that together. But talk a little bit about laughter in a marriage. I think that's very important to bond them together.
Well, I think it is in the top 3 makes a great marriage. And that doesn't mean you have to say lines and follow yourself around with a drum set, ba-dum-bum, every time you say that. That's not what it's about. It's about this. Dee Dee and I were dating. It was right before we got married. This is what made me think, oh, maybe she'll make me a good wife. And because me being a comedian, I had to have someone with a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not going to be with someone that doesn't have a sense of humor. And so we went to a water park that day, and we went in the restaurant and after the water park, and we had no plans on going to the restaurant, but we went to go eat lunch afterwards. Well, it's kind of chilly, and because we just had damp hair, and we were sitting in the restaurant, and we had T-shirts on, and it was getting a little chilly. So I took my arms and I put them inside the T-shirt. I just pulled them in. Well, Dee Dee said, oh, that's a great idea, and she pulled her arms in too. So essentially we were sitting there, we both had no arms, and our T-shirt sleeves were just, flapping. And the waitress came up and said, I see you guys are here, and she was looking at us like, why we have no arms. And I said, as you can see, we have no arms, and if you could feed us tonight, that'll be great. Well, the waitress started laughing, and she said, that'll cost you extra. Well, my wife leans her right hip over, and she goes, the money's in my right pocket. And we both started laughing. Well, you know what? That was a memory that here it is almost 20 years later, and we both remember that story. It was just fun, something fun that happened. At the same luncheon that we were at, I took a little, I think it was sour cream, and I said, smell this. And I just kind of like touched her nose with it just a little bit, and she pulled back, and she said, oh, you want to play that way? And she got a whole bunch of sour cream on her finger, and she went to, I thought she was coming at me with the sour cream, and she did it. Well, I grabbed her wrist, which stopped her hand cold, and the sour cream went blip right across the side of my face. Well, we looked over at the table of 12 beside us, and they were roaring, laughing, and I was just like, and it was just a memory, but I knew that here's a girl that can, laugh at herself and laugh with me, and, I think our marriage might be a little bit more fun. So, sense of humor is what it's about. I think that not only a sense of humor, but you need to compromise with each other too. Like, for instance, my Uncle Joe caught he said, Scott, I caught a 83-pound trout. I said, Uncle Joe, I don't think God makes an 83-pound trout. He said, it was 83 pounds. And I went, okay, fine. Well, with that, I said, okay, Uncle Joe, I was at the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and I pulled in something from the shore, and I drug it. It took me 45 minutes to reel it in. Finally, I pulled it in, and I said, Uncle Joe, it was an old brass lantern, and it had seaweed all over it. And Uncle Joe, the candle was still lit in the brass lantern. And he said, Scott, listen, I'll take 80 pounds off my fish, but you got to blow that light out. So I think in a marriage, you need to compromise. Look, it's not all about you.
Right.
And I mean, look, if you make it all about you, not only are you immature, but you're selfish, and good luck with your marriage. So you need to compromise, and if you compromise, you'll have a more enjoyable journey.
And I also think tagged onto the back of that is forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Because many times we do things, even if they're unintentional, to hurt our spouses.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be a comment, whether it be something that we physically do, whatever it might be, we hurt them emotionally, mentally, and we have to realize that we have to offer forgiveness as well as accept it. And you should never, you should never go to bed angry. You should try to resolve that before you go to bed. Now, that doesn't mean you have long discussions. The worst time that you can have a discussion is before you go to bed at night. You're both tired. You both just want to be in bed. You want to be asleep. But you need to realize that if you go to bed angry, usually you'll wake up angry.
Mm-hmm.
And so there needs to be forgiveness there. And you should be all about forgiveness. If your wife is, you can tell that she's angry, then you just say, no, what's wrong, honey? What's going on here? And have that discussion. And then, ask forgiveness. No matter what it is, just ask for forgiveness. Interesting story the other day, we were talking, it kind of goes along with communication too. My wife and I were going to be going someplace, and like you said before we go, for some reason we want to clean the house up, make sure that when they come home, that there's nothing that they have to do there. So we were going to this place, and I was saying, okay, honey, what would you like me to do? Try to help you out here. So she gave me a few things to do, and then after I got those things done, I came back and said, what else do you want me to do? And she gave me a couple more things, and I did that. And I came back the third time, and I was going to ask her what she wanted me to do, and she was on the phone, so I really couldn't really ask her. So I was like, well, I guess there's nothing else for me to do here. So I went and I laid down on the couch, and I fell asleep. And about a little while later, I started hearing this blump, blump, blump as these footsteps across the floor, loud footsteps across the floor, and clanking of dishes and all sorts of things. And she was walking back and forth between the two rooms, and all of a sudden she stopped in front of the couch, and she looked at me. She said, "You're asleep." And I said, "I was." And I said, "Honey," because I could tell by the look on her face that she was not happy. And I said, "Honey, I asked you if there was anything that I could do, and I didn't think there was anything else that I could do." She goes, "Well, I thought it was obvious. The dishes needed put away, and the garbage needed taken out." And she named off a couple other things. And I said, "Honey, what's obvious to you isn't obvious to me, but
Right.
I'm sorry. You need to tell me what you want, because I really do want to make you happy. What do you want?" And so, those kind of things, there was a forgiveness. Obviously we could both looked at it and said, well, I'm right, and the other person said that I'm right. But it's better to just say, I'm sorry. I really do want to make you happy. One of my goals in life is really to make you happy. So I am sorry. And not even making excuses, just, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Mm-hmm. And it just takes that tension out of the air. And then there's, okay, I forgive you. And then you can move on from there. So it's important to keep your accounts current.
Mm-hmm. Well, my wife has a wonderful saying. She said, and she made this up. I quote her for the last, 15 years. She said, "Look, we know who's right. We know who's wrong. Can we just leave it like that?" And of course, we start laughing, and really, that's what it comes down to. Sometimes you need to agree that you disagree. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. And because there's no way. Can you imagine? If you're right all the time, who are you? Are you a perfect being?
Right.
There's no way you can be right all the time. So it really doesn't matter. Right. It really doesn't. Right. And so you just need to respect each other, and you need to make that the focus. Right. Just respect each other. I think what's very important, though, is to thank your spouse for things that they do. Mm-hmm. I know they just say, well, it's my wife, it's my husband. No. It's a human being that did something for you. Mm-hmm. And I thank my wife each and every time. Let me repeat that. I thank each and every time she cooks dinner. And you can tell she appreciates it. I appreciate that she cooks almost every meal in the house. So I think that marriages go a lot smoother, in my opinion, when manners are involved. Please, thank you, I appreciate you, that type of thing. And I think a lot of people just forget and they just go, oh, well, that's just my wife. No, it's a human being that did something for you. Thank them. Thank them. And would you please do this? Not do this. Would you please do this?
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, expectations in a marriage are one of the things that cause a lot of consternation is expecting things of your spouse just because they're your spouse.
Right.
I expect her to cook my food. I expect her to wash my clothes. Where are my shirts? Where are my clean socks? I don't like this dinner. No. Those are expectations that you should not have. Just because she's your spouse, just because you attribute those things to a woman's role, doesn't mean that you shouldn't say thank you.
Right.
Thank you, honey, for having clean socks in my drawer. Thank you for doing my laundry. Thank you. And it doesn't take. I mean, how much is that? It's a few seconds of your time to appreciate that person for what they do, and you can always find something good in a person to thank them for and to be appreciative for.
I call them magic drawers, and I'm like, honey, you're not going to believe it. I opened up my drawer. I didn't have any socks and underwear. The next time I opened them, they were like there, and I was just like, I really appreciate you, and I'll give her a kiss and a hug or whatever, and say, I really appreciate what you do for us. And it's so funny because she usually returns it and say, I really appreciate what you do for us too, making money and doing other stuff. So it's like, you both have a role. I mean, it's if you look at yourself like a puzzle, one puzzle piece by itself isn't the whole puzzle.
Right.
So you complete the picture when there's both of you. I mean, you do. Everybody's responsible for their thing, and things just run smoothly when you're together. I mean, do you hope to succeed? Or are you committed to success? That's what it comes down to.
Right.
So to me, I think if you're not committed, you're in trouble.
One of the things that I think about men is we are really oblivious to things too. We can walk right through our house, and our wife could have cleaned the kitchen. She could have cleaned the living room. She could have vacuumed things. She could have made it really nice. She probably even have a candlelight dinner on the table, and we just walk right past it towards our television set or towards what we're doing, and not even notice. I know many times my wife will say to me, "Did you see the bedroom?" And I say, "Well, no, I haven't gone in there yet." And it's important to her that I make a big deal about the fact that she's cleaned up the house, because that's important to her. Her home's important to her. And it really is important to me too. But sometimes we just kind of walk through with blinders on, like the old Clydesdale horses with the blinders on the side,
Right.
and we don't notice. And we should kind of like be Sherlock Holmeses and things. What might be different here today? What can I compliment her on? I see that you have all my shirts you organized all my shirts, or I can see, hey, you really cleaned up the bedroom, or wow, the house is really looking nice, or hey, I noticed that you trimmed the hedges, or that you put flowers out in front, or that you painted this, or hey, that looks really great. I like the way you decorated this. Whatever it may be, those little touches, those little things really are important to your spouse. So we got to quit being oblivious and start, let's be like Clydesdales and more like Sherlock Holmeses.
I agree with you. Dee Dee has a dad that when they were growing up, she would clean the whole bathroom, and then he would say, well, you missed that corner, and so I'm very careful not to do that. It's like if I see, the whole clean bathroom and there's like one corner that, the cobweb or something in there, I try not to mention that one thing. I just say, this is wonderful, and then just get the cobweb yourself. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal, but the different love languages, when it comes to me, I like, when we're watching TV, for her to rub my head. I mean, I just, when I have my head on her lap and she's rubbing my head while we're watching a movie, it's kind of cozy to do that. If I did that for her, I mean, I do it, but that's not the most important thing to her. The most important thing to her is if I have a mop in my hand or a broom or something, that shows that I love her to her. And women are all different. I mean, what they want. I mean, that's why this book, The 5 Love Languages, it shows what you can do as a guy. Because as guys, we're clueless in a lot of these things, and we need it on a billboard to to get the message across to us.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the number one things for men that causes divorce in a marriage is important to them is sex. It's not the most important thing to women. The most important thing is security and intimacy. But for men, it's sex. And a lot of times we think that the same things that turn us on are the same things that turn our wife on. And that is almost never the case.
No, it's not.
There are some men who, they want their wives to look at pornographic material or whatever. That just, most of the time, that just turns a woman off.
Absolutely.
So we need to find out what really does turn our wife on. What is really going to help her to get into that mood? Because women take a lot longer to get into the mood. And I say that because there was a story about a friend of mine who asked his wife, he said, "Honey, what would really get you in a romantic mood?" And we're talking about the mop. She says, "If I walked into the kitchen and saw you with a mop in your hand, mopping the floor, I would jump your bones."
Absolutely. So, my wife's the same way. I can relate to that. So, like you said, the more you know your spouse, the better you'll be. I mean, it's just understanding. I mean, it's it's if you try to teach a dog algebra, I mean, the dog's going to look at you like, huh? And we're like that dog. It's like, you've got to explain it to us. Don't explain it to us through algebra. Just say, look at the ball, go get it. I mean, It's just like, and so. If you're having trouble with something, tell your wife. Just said, look. And one of my sayings is, look, honey, I'm not a mind reader. I'm a magician. Which I do little coins and card tricks. But I'm not a mind reader. I don't know. You got to tell me.
Well, there's one marriage guy that talks about things. He says, women say to him all the time, "I shouldn't have to tell my husband more than once." And he says to them, "Women, let me give you a little secret. You have to tell us more than once."
You do.
Because we're oblivious to things. And I've seen so many times, I have 3 boys. It is so interesting in our house. My wife will put the garbage you walk out into the garage, the garbage is sitting right there. You have to walk over it to get out of our house.
Mine's hanging on the front doorknob, so I can't open the front door without it.
Yeah. But you know something? They walk right past it every time. We need to be told what's going to make you happy. One guy said, "Just tell me what you want. I really want to make you happy. Just tell me what you want." Because women do, like you were talking about the story with your wife and the Tempur-Pedic bed they will go around in circles. They don't get right straight to the point. They are not communicating on the highest level. They just tell me what you want straight out. I mean, men are like that. They want things just listed out. Just tell me A, B, C, and D, and I will do A, B, C, and D.
Well, she'll tell. My wife will tell me how much time I'll be involved. Like she'll go, "All right, look, this story is going to be about 5 minutes, okay?" And pretty much my friend Janet is pregnant, okay? And I'm like, okay, all right. Now tell me the details, you know what I mean? It's like, so, but we need to stay focused and but not get complacent. I think a lot of marriages that get a divorce, they get complacent. And that's why, we just need to stay focused on what's important, what is important, and what's important to you, what's important to her. Figure it out and do it. Women need to be intimate. They need to feel close to you. Men want respect. And not that a woman doesn't want respect, but it's more important to a guy because it's like, that's why it says love and respect. And the verse to her is love and honor her. So they need to be loved.
Right. And we'll work on our cars. We'll work on the yard. We'll work at our work. But the most important thing in our lives, we spend very little time maintaining.
Oh, sure.
We will study the manual on our truck or on our boat or on our fishing gear or whatever. We'll watch every fishing show. We'll watch every golf show, how to swing better, whatever. But when it comes to our marriages, we don't spend a lot of time there. And that doesn't make any sense. You should spend the time where it's most important.
Well, again, is getting back to what's the focus? Right. And the focus is being there for each other no matter what.
Right.
And, a lot of times we lose focus because we're not getting enough sleep. And I'm big on this. If you go to my website, I have a website, movingpeopleforward.com, you can actually download top 10 things to get you sleep. So if someone goes there, go learn how, or buy a sleep book. But I will tell you this: lack of sleep, you find yourself arguing. You find you about talking about just ridiculous things, arguing over nothing. Vince Lombardi once said, "A lack of sleep makes cowards of us all," and isn't that true?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're not all the same, so therefore we're going to have disagreements. We're going to have what people call fights or arguments or whatever.
That's not true. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
We're gonna
joke. Sorry.
we're all going to have fights or arguments, and the thing is, we want to make sure that we make those things a win-win situation. The goal in a discussion or an argument is for both people to win, not just one person to win.
Oh, sure.
Because unfortunately, if you win, someone else has to lose, and in a marriage, that's not good. Because you're a team. Marriage is a partnership. It's not a competition. When there's disagreement, there needs to be a resolution that comes up between the two people. And so we want to make sure that when we do have these disagreements, that we're not, like you said, immature. We make sure that we remain in control of our emotions, remain in control of our own personage. We make sure that we're not abusive. There's no name calling. There's no bringing up old wounds and old things. We want to make sure that it's in a private situation. You should never argue in public. So we're talking about never cutting your spouse down in public. You should never argue in public. It needs to be done in a private place. And especially if you have kids, you really shouldn't argue in front of your kids. You need to take it in a private place and discuss things and come up with a win-win situation. How can we resolve this thing? There's a little story about my kids. They all love pizza. I mean, what kid doesn't love pizza? Mm-hmm. And the last piece would come down to the last piece of pizza, and the kids were like, "Well, I want that piece, and I want that piece." What we found out is that my youngest liked the crust part of it, and the one who was second, the second oldest, liked the pepperoni and the cheese and all that kind of stuff. So we would take the piece of pizza, we would scrape the pepperoni and the stuff off onto his plate, and we'd give the crust to the other one, and they were both happy.
I got one word: brilliant.
Really? Well, the thing is that most arguments are about that. Most arguments are about the fact that if you would sit down and find out what do you really want, you'd find out it's a win-win situation. We can both have what we really need. Mm-hmm. So, make sure that you're going to these things in a real win-win mode.
Well, there's a solution to everything. And I know people that are headed for divorce. They think that there's no hope.
Right.
And I always think there's a window of opportunity. There was one guy up north that, again, another guy, a different guy than the guy from Pennsylvania. He said, "Scott, my wife and I are getting a divorce." And I said, why are you getting a divorce? He says, it's just not working for us. And I said, uh-huh. And I said, well, what have you guys, where do you think you went? He says, we just grew apart. And I said, did you ever have dates with her, like a steady date with her? He said, no. Why would we do that? And I'm like, well, there you go. That's where you're at. Well, I said, why don't you just, before you get a divorce, why don't you just start from the beginning, where you started? I mean, you fell in love with her for some reason. Mm-hmm. And so why don't you go back to there? And he said, I'm telling you, there's no hope. And these guys are, let's just say, one is a lawyer and one is a judge. And you think to yourself, they could work it out.
Yeah.
They're professional negotiators, And so he called me up, I don't know, like maybe 6 months later. And I said, hey, how's everything going with you? And he goes, you're not going to believe this. He said, remember we had a lunch about 6 months ago? And I said, yeah. He said, you know how you said how important it is to date? I went back to the drawer and I said, all right, let's just go get a drink. And I asked her to go get a drink with me. And then it went into another date. We fell in love again. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, see, this is what I'm saying. I mean, it's like, you fall out of love, well, get back into love,
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that, And so this is a person, a lawyer, and a judge that were going to get divorced. And they started dating again. So, I think it's what you put into it, you're going to get back. Mm-hmm. My wife one day woke up. She said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to plant big old juicy tomatoes. And I was like, great, hon. And she said she went to the grocery store. She got this big, this packet of seeds that said Big Bertha tomato seeds or whatever it was. And she planted them. Well, we waited with anticipation for tomatoes to come up. And they never got bigger than a cherry tomato, which is a little Tommy toe tomato, just the size of a quarter. And we wondered why. So the next year we went back, we got the big old juicy tomatoes. Same thing happened, little quarter-sized tomatoes. Well, we discovered that, it's not actually what you say you're planting. It's what you actually are planting. Mm-hmm. So we were planting those seeds that said they were big old juicy tomatoes, but apparently the wrong seeds got in the wrong package. Well, I just feel like in a marriage, are you planting the right seeds? Are you having a great attitude? Are you complimenting each other? Are you taking the stress level down? Are you, are you planting the right thing? Because, who doesn't want a big old juicy marriage? I mean, why wouldn't you want a wonderful marriage? So, make sure you plant the right things, guys. And I came up with an acronym that helps a lot of people that tell me that this helps them when they get under a stressful situation. And the acronym is MAGIC, MAGIC. And when we get in an impossible situation, we're all stressed out of our mind, I just remember, like, you're in traffic, you're arguing with your wife, people are cutting you off in traffic, and, you're under these conditions, and I just say, my attitude greatly improves circumstances. Mm-hmm. So I think I need a little bit of magic. And when I think that, my attitude greatly improves circumstances, I use it all the time because it really does. They interviewed CEOs, I think it was like 1,000 CEOs, and they said, what's the number one ingredient that makes a Fortune 500 company successful? And they said, attitude is number one. Mm-hmm. Number one. So if it makes a Fortune 500 company or a very successful company, it can make a great marriage if you have the right attitude.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They interviewed a number of older couples who had stayed married for like 50 years. Mm-hmm. And they said, what makes a happy couple? They asked them, what makes a happy couple? And these are the things that they came up with. They said, happy couples communicate openly with each other.
Yes.
They care about each other's feelings. They share routines and dreams. They feel at home with one another. They don't hold a grudge. They look for the best in one another. They don't struggle for the upper hand. They sacrifice for one another. Very important. They learn to change. There's no such thing as I can't change. They learn to change. They realize that spontaneity is important to their marriage. Sometimes we get into these ruts. There's spontaneity. Hey, let's just go away for the weekend. Let's do this. Let's do that. They understand the importance of sexual intimacy. They usually describe their spouse as their best friend, and they are committed to each other. Mm-hmm. And these are people who've been married a long time. These are not people who've been married just a few years. This is what makes a lasting marriage.
Well, if you don't have commitment, I don't think you have anything. I mean, you did take that vow, and it was a commitment in front of God to each other. So why wouldn't you want to be committed? If you're not committed, I don't think you have a chance. I just want to share a story that I use in my motivational talk, and it was an orange salesman that taught me about commitment. And to me, I can't believe I got a lesson of commitment through an orange salesman, but that's where it came to me. And this guy was down in Florida selling oranges, and he said, I got out of the car to stretch. I was with two other comics. One went to get gas, one went to make a phone call, and I just got out to stretch. And there was a gentleman that came up and said, would you like to buy some oranges? I said, no thanks, I know what an orange tastes like. He said, no, have you tried one of these oranges with his outstretched hand? I said, no, I haven't tried one of those oranges. He then put it on the table, cut a slice off, and held it in front of me and said, are you sure? I said, I'm sure. He then took a bite, and juice was coming down his chin. I said, that's a juicy orange. He then cut another slice off and said, "Are you absolutely positively sure?" At this point, I didn't know. I said, "All right, give me the orange." I then took it to my mouth, and juice was coming down my chin. As I loaded the 2 bags of oranges into the trunk, he held up a grapefruit and said, "We got grapefruit too." I said, "Get away from me." That guy was relentless. Why? Because he was committed. My question to all the guys that are listening to this tape, are you committed? Because I'll tell you what, it will show one way or another. And if an orange salesman can do it, can't we be committed to our very own marriages? Good luck, guys.
Yeah, good luck, guys, and thank you for investing in this tape.